It was a rainy night, and I had just finished my shift at a local family diner. It was the so-called hotspot of my town where everyone from around would often stop by for a coffee or a bite to eat. This happened in the late fall of New Jersey. I was in high school at the time and worked this job to save up for a car. We'll call the diner the Shack. The Shack was about a 40-minute drive from my apartment where I lived with my mom. I obviously didn't own a car, so that meant I would be constantly taking the bus to and from work. Well, on this night, I was getting ready to close so I could make it to the bus when a coworker of mine had accidentally dropped some dishes on the floor. Being the kind-hearted soul I was, I offered to help her clean up, which maybe took about a few minutes max. After that, we clocked out and I walked over to the bus stop. But after checking the bus tracker on my phone, I came to the realization that I was 10 minutes too late. That was the last bus transit in the area, so that meant I had no way of getting home. This was before Uber and Lyft were a thing, and I didn't have the number for my coworkers, so I couldn't ask for help. And my mother was the type of person who made me take accountability for my mistakes. So if I were to ask her to come get me, she'd decline and scold me about how I should have planned accordingly. At that point, I decided that I'd walk home, which would take a little over 2 hours. Now, the diner I worked at was located in the suburbs of town. There's a single road with woods on both sides of it, and the diner was sort of alongside the road. The nearest buildings were quite a ways away, so the location was sort of rural, if that makes sense. So there I am, walking along the sidewalk with my earbuds in, listening to my music for about 20 minutes when my iPod died. Because I'm the idiot who constantly forgets to charge it and leaves her cable at home. With nothing to do, I get out my phone and played some iOS games while watching ahead of me. Then, about 3 minutes later, I see lights slowly illuminate from behind me and the sound of an engine. I turn around and there's a car approaching and stops right next to me. The driver puts their window down and I see a man I had never seen before ask if I were okay. I told him that I was and that I was just walking home. He acknowledges me and asks, "I can give you a ride if you want. I'm going in that direction anyway, so it won't be a problem." Now let me give you a description on this dude. He appeared to be around my age, decent looking, and wore a Target uniform. I know this because my sister used to work at Target and would always come home wearing the same uniform. I was hesitant at first, but it was damn near freezing out and getting a ride seemed like the only option. At that point, I accepted the ride and got into the front seat of his car. I know, I'm an idiot. He introduced himself as David and told me he was actually heading home himself. I sort of grew on him and told him my situation about missing the bus and how nobody would come to get me. He then starts to make this joke about how he was lucky he found me, which I'll admit made me a little uncomfortable. Although I didn't tell him that as I didn't want to sound rude. I give him the basic directions of the area my apartment was in, and he starts heading towards there. Not much was said for most of the car ride though. Every time I'd start up a conversation with him, he'd give me a dry response or short replies. I figured he wasn't the social type, so I just sort of sat back and ended up falling asleep. As I said, it was a 40-minute drive, and I was exhausted from work. I wake up about maybe 20 minutes later and look out the window to see that we were in a completely different area. We were on this paved dirt road in the woods that I could only assume was maybe in the area of my work.
David? We're going the wrong way.
Yeah, I know. I just have to do something really quick. Right then, I took notice that his demeanor completely shifted, which made my heart race. He went from this casual, normal guy to just sketchy. Just then, another car approaches us nose to nose and I see two people get out. He tells me to wait inside the car while he, quote, deals with this and to not get out. I see two men along with David go up to each other and begin talking while occasionally glancing over at me. For whatever reason, I started to get this strange feeling that something was off. Something in my gut told me I wasn't safe and that I needed to get out of there ASAP. I undo my seatbelt and open the door slightly when I hear this blood-curdling scream that echoed across the area. The scream surely came from inside that other car, and that's when I booked it out of there. I hear one of the men yell, "Hey," followed by 2 gunshots that thankfully missed me. As horrified as I was, I didn't care anymore. I only focused on what was in front of me, praying to God I didn't trip. All the while, I could hear footsteps approaching fast from behind while I'm navigating through the woods. Eventually, I come across a highway with some truck haulers passing through and flag them down. Thankfully, one of them stops, and after explaining myself, he takes me to the nearest police station. From there, I called my mom, frantically telling her to please pick me up. She of course did, and apologized profusely for not picking me up to begin with. I cried for hours on and quit my job the next day. The police had looked into what had happened and had managed to find the dirt road, but no signs of the cars. They also contacted all the targets in the area, asking if anyone named David worked there. Sure enough, there was no record of any David working there. This meant that whoever's car I got into that night was posing as a fake Target employee as a way to, I guess, make themselves trustworthy. As for the scream I heard, that was never revealed. I'm convinced that whatever I came across that night was some sort of trafficking ring, and that I was their next victim. Lots of crime and shady stuff happen around the area I live in, but I just haven't seen it until now. A year later, I moved out of state for college, and I'm having the time of my life in a much safer environment. In the early 2000s, when I was around 19 or so, my friends and I attended a rock concert of our favorite band, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I lived in Arizona at the time, and there's not much to do, so this was our highlight of the year. We've been wanting to see this performance for months now, and they had fortunately been on tour in our city. Needless to say, we had a great time, and once the concert was over, everyone had to exit the venue. We exit the venue, and I call my mom to pick us up, as she would be the one to take us back. However, she told me that her car was having trouble starting, and that my sister had taken the other car elsewhere. Other than that, my mom sort of left it up to us to decide how to get home. Now, for a little bit of context, the 3 of us were a bit rebellious and did things most parents probably wouldn't agree on. One of my friends recommended we hitchhike, as he claimed he's done it many times before and that it always works. I've never hitchhiked before, so naturally I was skeptical about it. But my other friend sort of talked me into it, and in the end, I had to agree. We walk along the sidewalk and stick out our thumbs to indicate that we needed a ride. After maybe about 20 or so cars that passed, we see one car slowly pull up to us. The driver were these 2 Hispanic men who were maybe in their 30s hitting vapes. We thought nothing of it, and they agreed to give us a ride back so long as we paid them a few bucks. I'd say right away, however, I began to get this strange vibe from them that seemed relatively off. For some reason though, I just couldn't put my finger on it. They start making their way over to my house with us helping direct them on where to go. Then, after 10 minutes or so, the driver tells us that he has to pick something up from a friend which happened to be on the way to my house. I mean, I guess there wasn't an issue, so I told him it was fine. He gives me a nod as a thank you, and we go on our way. So there we are, all in the car, not saying a word to each other when they pull into this empty plaza where another car can be seen. And standing outside of this car were a few people. At first, we didn't think much of it, but as we got closer, I began to notice how intimidating these people were. There were 3 men, two of them being absolute units and one with a black mask. Alarms instantly go off in my head, and we all kind of look at each other, knowing damn well this wasn't right. The driver and his buddy get out of the car, leaving one of the windows open, so we were able to understand a lot what was said. Apparently, this guy had owed money to these people for the import of various goods. At first, we didn't understand what he meant by that, but after putting two and two together, we realized it had to be drugs. Because our driver is in trouble with the fucking cartel. My friends and I are debating on what to do now, as we know damn well from movies and TV shows that these people do not mess around, especially when they're owed money. Suddenly, I hear one of the men speaking Spanish and watch as he pulls out a gun and puts it to our driver's head. All the while, the driver is begging for his life and promises to pay them soon. My stepmother is Mexican, so while I understand a fair bit of Spanish, I don't speak it. What they're saying to this man, though, is horrendous. For one, they knew where our driver lived, knew his family, and that if he didn't pay up by a certain time, they'd kill both him, his wife, and their 6-month-old child. More specifically, to keep his child for themselves. Whatever that meant. There was other stuff that was said that I'm not going to share, but you get the idea. My friends and I were appalled by what we were hearing, and just then, two of the cartel members spot my friends in the car. These car windows weren't tinted by any means, and the parking lot lights made it easy for us to be seen. They approached the car while one of the men stayed with our driver. I quietly cussed to myself, and once they approached the car, they motioned for us to roll down the window. We were hesitant at first, but eventually complied and rolled it down. One of the men spoke with this heavy accent and told us that our friend over here was in, quote, deep trouble. Then they told us something that absolutely shook us to the bone.
Do you see your friend there? ¿Tú crees que nos olvidamos? We never forget about it. You either nos debes or we come for your family first. That's how we teach you loyalty.
I shit you not, I almost threw up right then and there, but somehow managed to keep my composure. A few minutes later, the driver gets back in the car, sweating like a dog, and tells us that everything is fine and to not worry. Me, nor my friends ever found the words to say. We just stayed quiet for the rest of the ride. Needless to say, they did drop us off while telling us to not say a word about what had happened. When we got home, my parents could tell we were a bit shaken up, but we had just said that we were tired after a long night out. I'm still not sure what they would have done had we told them the real reason. For the next 2 or so weeks, we all laid out our theories about why or how this guy may have been involved with the cartel. We weren't sure if it was by choice, forced into it, or was perhaps even part of it. How they knew his family and where they were is anyone's guess. They could have been bluffing, but if it's anything like the movies or shows, everyone knows that these people will find you some way, somehow. The one thing we do know is that I myself am highly convinced that we got into a car with a cartel member that night. My friends and I are thankful to be alive today, because they could have easily killed us right there as a way of demonstrating to our driver their raw power. We certainly don't plan on seeing those people again, never mind hitchhiking again. This happened to my dad when he was in his 20s, and it's something even he still can't get over. Not because of what he saw, but because of what happened, as it still bothers him till this day. This happened in the 80s. My dad had just finished dropping off his group of friends at their university dorms in his new Mustang. As a young adult, he loved that car and essentially treated it as his own kid. Sounds weird, I know, but that's what happens when you have a dad who is obsessed with automobiles. My dad had lived off campus at his parents' house, aka my grandparents', and was driving home after a night out. He described this night as being tiring and, quote, very dark. He's driving along, navigating on this dark stretch of road when he sees something up ahead. Upon closer inspection, he saw that it was a young woman, maybe late 20s to early 30s, flagging him down, giving the all too familiar upward thumb. Now, my dad was and is a nice guy, especially to someone who needed help. Without question, he opens the passenger door and she gets in without saying a word and points in the direction she wants to go. My dad had assumed she was deaf or had a speech issue that would prevent her from speaking. But needless to say, he was too tired to care and just drove off. She doesn't say a word, and my dad is just focused on the road ahead of him, not paying attention to the woman. At some point, he begins to get tired and glances over to the passenger seat to see that the woman is now gone. This obviously catches him off guard, and he slams the brakes while absolutely losing his shit. After stopping his car and looking back down the road, he tries to process what just happened. After a while, he just keeps driving with his heart pounding out of his chest and ends up at a small gas station nearby. My dad goes in and explains to the gas station attendant about the woman who just blatantly disappeared from his car. According to my dad, he thought the attendant would think of him as crazy, but his true reaction was something he'd never expected. The attendant calmly said to him, I'm not surprised. You're not the first person to tell me that.